Thank you for staying with us. We'll continue our discussion with Rabbi Eliezer. Sorry, I
don't worry, it's a hard name to pronounce. It's good. We're good.
Okay, so we've talked about Russia and a little bit about U.S., the Jewry, how the different denomination, the difference between Chabad, which I think it's interesting. I've been going to a different denomination synagogue in Newport Beach for 25 years. When I moved to Villa Park, and the very first time I came because Mary Kramer invited me for her 70th birthday, I came home and told my wife, oh my God, this is the people that think like me. They're my people. And I said, yeah, we're going to go to the Chabad temples because this is the people I can associate with. Can you talk just a little bit about that? Again, why it's so important for Chabad people to hold the court?
Chabad is a balance. On one level, we don't believe in changing tradition. We don't believe on taking thousands of years of teachings that go back to Mount Sinai and Jewish tradition and changing them. At the same time, we believe in living in a modern world. And beyond that, we believe in giving space for people to observe according to their own level, not being judgmental. So when you take that balance of a loyalty and fidelity to tradition and a tolerance and openness to people of all kinds, that's why Chabad today is growing so dramatically all over the country. In Orange County, where we live, there's 15 Chabad centers. Plus, we have also centers, a school, etc., but community centers, Chabad centers, synagogues. And so why are they growing? Because Jews are finding this balance of acceptance, modernity, and tradition is something which is a sweet spot which many people are finding they're very comfortable with.
That's why I became so comfortable, and I try to come as much as they can, but I definitely try not to miss Thursday in the morning with Levi, because he teaches me stuff that I really don't know anything about it. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about the world. No, before we get to the world, let's talk about Israel. I mean, why it's so important for Israel to continue to exist. And we have a place to go to. You've been to Israel many, many times.
Right.
Tell us.
Well, Israel has to be one of the central foundations of Jewish identity, because along with the Torah that was given by God to the Jewish people was given the land of Israel to the Jewish people. And Jews have been living in Israel for over 3,000 years. It's nothing, they talk in America, what's a big historical event? Something that happened in 1863 in the Civil War, which is 100 and some odd years ago. In Israel, that's 5,000, that's 2,000, that's 3,000 years old. It goes back to the very sense of history. It goes to the very core of our identity. We call it in Hebrew, Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. Its foundational component of what it means to be a Jew is that Jewish people have a place and home of their own. Tragically, because the temple was destroyed the first time 2,500 years ago, and Jews lost their sovereignty after the Babylonians invaded, and then the Romans destroyed Jewish sovereignty in the year 70. We lost again. Now Jews have returned to their homeland. The Jews always lived there, but they've asserted their identity in a sovereign kind of way. And even though it's not a utopian society, because Israel is far from a perfect society, nevertheless it is the tremendous economic success, and most importantly, it's the really only democracy in the Middle East. It's the only place where you have all different kinds of people that live together. They may agree and disagree, but nevertheless they have a country where there is freedom and there's opportunity, and it's not a despotic country like we find, which is all the other countries that surround the area, and it's a remarkable miracle in modern day times.
I've been to Israel many times myself. I have relatives there from Russia, relatives that was there from 1947, before even Israel became as a country. And when you go there, I personally, it was on my bucket list since I was 12 years old, since Soviet Union. And we got there, especially in the old Jerusalem, we were walking, and I almost felt like tingling in my fingers. I don't know what it was. I cannot explain it, but I knew there was something in the air.
Well, you're walking down the street, and there's suddenly the wall that King Solomon built, almost 3,000 years ago. Or you come to the Temple Mount, and we see the retaining wall around the Holy Temple that existed in Jerusalem, that the original foundation was built, again, almost 3,000 years ago, and it was rebuilt around a little over 2,000 years ago. So you are living, in a sense, a place of history. And you're living in and when we study the Torah, we study the Bible, we learn all the stories there, we see where they happen. We know, this is what happened. This story, this is where Joshua was, this is where Moses was. So this is all webbed into the very core of our identity. It's woven into the very core of our identity. It's who we are as Jews. And you can't separate the Jewish people from their homeland. They have a tradition of Torah and teachings, and we have a homeland, which is Israel.
So now I want to ask something else. Israel, obviously, Jews live in Israel, but Israel tolerates all the religions.
Yeah, that's true, because if you go to Jordan, there's a law: if a Jew buys a piece of land, he gets capital punishment, and if a Jew tries to live in Syria, he's not going to have an easy time, and if he's going to try to live in Iraq, he doesn't have a shot at all. There is some Jews in Iran, interestingly enough, about 15,000 Jews, and there are some Jews in Turkey. They're a tolerated minority, but they have no freedom and they have no rights. So not only do Jews have freedom and rights in Israel, you had an amazing thing in Israel. You had a president of Israel, an ex-president of Israel. Now the president is not like the prime minister in Israel; it's more about honorary position. But he had been involved with some kind of illegal acts, and he was prosecuted. And the judge on the Supreme Court who sentenced him to prison, one of the judges on the court that sentenced him to prison, was an Arab judge. So in the state of Israel, an Arab judge sentences the ex-president to go to prison. That's what democracy is about.
I love it. Okay, let's now turn a little bit towards what happened October 7th, and what have you been doing to support?
Well, I've been to Israel 4 times since October 7th. I mean, Israel, we have to understand what Israel's waging, because there's a total misunderstanding here in America. This is a battle between freedom and not freedom, et cetera, et cetera. In 2005, Israel left Gaza. I was against it. I spoke out against it at the time, because I said you're going to end up having a country run by Hamas. Now, what does Hamas want? If you look at the Declaration of Independence of the United States, and you look at the Constitution of the United States, it talks about freedom, it talks about rights. They have a constitution also. They wrote a charter, and their charter says they have 2 goals. Number 1 is the eradication of the state of Israel, and number 2 is the annihilation of every single Jew in the world. In other words, if a Jew lives in Poughkeepsie, or lives in Orange County, or lives in Venezuela, they want to kill him. So this was the aspirations of this society. So Israel left Gaza and said, you know what? We're not going to control Gaza anymore. There's Arabs that live here. Do what you want. So they created their own society. They had an election, and Hamas got in, and Hamas adopted a charter and said, you know what our goal is? We're not going to make this into the Singapore of the Middle East. We're not going to make this into the UAE, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai, which are today phenomenal economic centers doing fantastic, and they've also made peace with Israel. No, instead of doing what's good for our citizens, we're going to take all the money that's coming from overseas, and we're going to build tunnels, and we're going to build missiles, because deep down, it's a fundamental religious cult which really belongs in the Middle Ages, and says, what do we want to do? We want to kill every single Jew. That's what they believe in. That's what's written in the charter. I mean, I didn't write the charter, they did. And their actions are reflective of that charter. So Hamas is a fanatical religious movement that really belongs in the Middle Ages. And for us as Westerners, it's very difficult to understand, because we as Americans, we believe in tolerance. I have a disagreement. You're that religion, I'm this religion. The beauty of America is we all can coexist over here. The idea of using their beliefs as a tool, or the motivation to say we're going to kill everyone else, and they did it. And we saw what happened on October 7th, but October 7th was only was the end of what we've been seeing going on ever since they took over. Israel gave them in 2005 and said, take the whole kit and caboodle. Take it, do what you want with it. Instead of Singapore, we got a medieval bastion of terror.
And that's also underscored
with modern weapons.
Unfortunately. So the other thing that I wanted to is underline the stark differences. The most valuable thing in Judaism is life. We will do anything to prolong the life or save the life. They, on the other hand, cherish death.
So they're using their civilians as a tool to advance their goals because they don't see anything wrong with their civilians losing their lives. So they take missiles and they put them into hospitals, or they put them into mosques, they put them into schools, and also they have used their and with all due respect, their civilians also elected them. But that's all beside the point. But it's not a war against a normal military. It's a war against a guerrilla fundamentalist religious cult, which is using its civilians as human shields.
So just to underscore the same point, I really want people understand how humane IDF or Israeli Defense Forces. It's the only army in the world that tells we're going to come to this area, and they drop 3 days prior to that leaflets. The second day they drop dummy bombs on top of the building, and then third day saying that from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock we're coming to do military operation. So in other words, they tell their enemy where they're coming, what time they're coming, and what they're going to do. And yet, to the detriment of the loss of their own soldier, they're trying to...
But we also understand something else also. Beyond that is all these numbers you hear about how many people were killed in Gaza. There is people that are killed in Gaza, and tragically there's civilians that are killed in Gaza. And let's not talk what America did in Dresden, or how the Allies, what they did to Dresden in World War II, or what they did to Japan in Nagasaki, etc., in the end of World War II. But there's something else. The figures they're putting out for casualties, it's very interesting, which is they're screaming genocide. Well, why has the population of Gaza gone up for the last 5 or 10 years if Jews were creating a genocide? And number two, the majority of these casualties are men between 18 and 25, 18, 20, 30. In other words, they're combat veterans. So you cannot believe, during the time of the United States, fight the war in Germany, we didn't believe the things that Hitler told us. And during the time of the Cold War, we didn't believe what the communists told us. And I don't think at this point we should take the statistics and the figures and the assertions of a fundamental religious group who's took billions of dollars and built tunnels instead of skyscrapers that could have made Gaza into the greatest center. It's beautiful beaches. It could have been the vacation spot of the Middle East. You could have had hotels going down the front beaches. Said, you know what? We don't want hotels. We're going to buy missiles. And so therefore, those people who lied to the world, what they did with the money is lying to the world also with the casualties. And there is civilian casualties, there's no question. And the loss of any single civilian is a tragedy, because the loss of any human being is a tragedy. But who caused the war? There was a truce on October 6th. And you know something? The war could end today. It's very simple. Hamas puts down its arms and releases the hostages, and we're done.
Perfect. Now, I want you to talk a little bit when you go there. What do you do for the soldiers?
Let me just tell you I've been there 4 times since the war. So first thing, people are suffering. So we've been able to raise money here for humanitarian aid and for food and for things like this. Well, the first time I went was 2 weeks after the war started. And we got off the plane, 25, 26 rabbis, and we went to a kibbutz in central Israel. And all the people there was a town in southern Israel that was attacked called Kfar Aza. Now, Kfar Aza is an old socialist, leftist kibbutz, politically leftist. We're talking about, and people don't know the politics of Israel. There was a party called the Mapai Party, the Workers' Party. It was I'm telling you, it was like the left side of the Democratic Party here in the United States. And a lot of the people there were peace activists. They would go to Gaza and take children and bring them to the hospitals. They had moved in there in the 1950s on the border, and they built this beautiful town. So they're very, very secular. And they were all sitting in mourning. It was called sitting Shiva. They would sit together as families. According to Jewish tradition, when we lose a loved one, for 1 week we sit together with the family and we console them and help them out. So we walked in 25 rabbis, very religious, and these people were very secular. And we came them to console them. We said we came from America. It was a remarkable moment. Well, recently I went down to a combat base, which is on the edge of Gaza, literally 100 feet away. We made a barbecue for the soldiers, give them a sense of moral boost that we here American Jews are supporting what they did. Or I went to a town called Ofakim, which is just 10, 15 minutes from Gaza, which over 50, 60 people were killed there on the day of the massacre. And there's a soup kitchen there, and they deliver meals to 400 families a day. So we raised money, we brought them money to deliver the meals. A lot of these families lost loved ones during the attacks. So it's also coming and saying, we are here collectively, the Jewish people, and we are standing together with our brethren in Israel. We're proud Americans, and we are very proud Americans, because America, in my mind, is the greatest country in God's green earth. You know, that's an old saying that people like to say, because America is a country of remarkable compassion and goodness, and we see people that came from other countries, like you came from Russia. You see the difference with the uniqueness and blessing of America. At the same time, as Jews, we feel a connection to our ancient homeland, and we want to show our support to them. So by helping them out financially, especially families that have gone through terribly difficult times and lost loved ones, we're hopefully that we can help them out and raise their spirits.
So there's one thing that I read a book about Golda Meir, and she said very profound statement. She said, if we, Israeli and Israel, lay down the weapons today, we will be dead tomorrow. If the Muslims and Arabs lay down their weapons, there will be millennia of peace. So,
and we're seeing that already. We're seeing that in parts of the Muslim world, like the moderate Muslims. We're seeing that in the United Arab Emirates, and we're seeing other countries moving in that direction. We're beginning already to see the beginnings of that, because historically, when you look in the Islamic society, you see there's been two trends: one which is more fundamentalist, and one which is more moderate. And the moderates want to live a good life, and the fundamentalists want to use jihad, which is a term, or from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That means kill all the Jews in the land of Israel. That means basically from the river to the sea is from the Mediterranean, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea is all of Israel. So it's basically saying from the Pacific to the Atlantic, it'll all be free. In other words, we're going to get rid of all the Americans. That's what it's basically saying. We're going to get rid of all, or jihad, which is we're going to bring jihad to America. You know, we're going to bring intifada to America. What does intifada mean? Violence, attacks on citizens. So what Golda Meir said, who was a famous prime minister of Israel, she actually grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She grew up here in the United States. She was a Russian refugee whose parents came to this country after anti-Semitic.
From my city.
From your city, from Odessa. And she said that famously, but tragically it's still true today. And those Arab countries who are beginning to realize that if they put down the sword, it's only going to be an economic boost. And you know what's so interesting? You know where Israelis love to go for weekends nowadays? United Arab Emirates. That's the weekend. They get on the plane on Thursday night or Friday morning. It's a 2-3 hour flight. You go to Dubai for the weekend. There's great hotels. It's fantastic vacations. There's even kosher restaurants all over the place. Even Chabad is in Dubai, and in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And there's synagogues and there's everything. And guess what? Business is booming, and they may have their disagreements philosophically, theologically, politically, whatever, but this is the moderate Muslims who want to live in peace with the Jews.
And this is the wonderful thing about it, that we want to live in peace. We're not going to try to change anybody, but philosophically, we value life, not the death. And if we only can live together, it's going to be helpful for everybody. We shouldn't be killing each other. We should be building factories. We should be boosting up people from the bottom so they can better jobs, better education, medical care, and everything. As a matter of fact, people, as you said, some of those kibbutzniks, they were taking children.
See, the interesting thing about those kibbutzniks is because they were on the political left in Israel, they were known as very much they were ones who were advocating much stronger for they were the ones who really lost it most, because here are the ones which were in Israel we called them the peaceniks. They were the lefties, and they said, no, the Arabs really want to make a deal, let's work something out with them. And they were greatly surprised, because they were the ones who made that effort in that direction, and now they're demoralized, because the consensus today is we're not going to have a Palestinian state. Everybody realizes Gaza has taught the people of Israel that a Palestinian state is a recipe for disaster, only more radicalization, and they'll use whatever territory they have to try to use that as a base to destroy the state of Israel.
Thank you. Again, stay tuned. We're going away for the commercial, And we'll come back and we'll talk this is riveting conversation, and we talk about the world and how it affects us all and how we can live together in peace.